Right, so let's crack on. It'll be between Nick and I speaking tonight. We're going to be talking about value of you. So your self-confidence, your self-esteem, where you're coming from. Now we go a little bit deeper because we tend to like to assume that you've read a few things on the net, you've read a couple of books, you've gotten into the headspace. And we're not of the sort of like, hey, this is super, super basic, you can read it anywhere else. We're going to just get a little bit into it though. We're going to use some slides to guide us so that you stay on point and that you can read and we can talk about that. This is designed for all levels of development, obviously, but a lot of you we know, and we know where your heads are in respect to what your development's like. Okay, so I'm gonna sort of start there. Now we're gonna start with the first slide, which Nick is going to introduce in, and then we'll continue from there. So stay with us during that time. Take a couple of notes if you fancy, and make a couple of comments if you feel free. Yeah. Now. I like this slide. It's cool, isn't it? Is your self-confidence in your control? I'm possible. You can do anything. Well, self-confidence is self-belief in oneself. Now, when you believe in yourself and you've got value in yourself and you feel you're in control, obviously you have confidence. Yeah. Now, confidence is something that eludes most people, 90% of people actually. They're competent when they know what they're doing in terms of their job, but they're not confident when it comes to all aspects of their lives, and they're two different things. So you can be competent being a PT coach, but you might not be confident in another area of your life, in relationships, or in another aspect of something you're trying to develop, or even in yourself for what you're able to do. You might not be able to jump on a thing like this and feel comfy. I know that Jodie, and no disrespect, Jodie, but you're working on your overall confidence, and if you're more quiet and introverted, you might have two sides to you. I'm not disputing that, but you may feel that you want to draw more confidence forwards. Okay, and so there's no rights or wrongs. Nobody's perfect. In fact, as we grow through life, part of the fun is finding our self-expression, who we are, what we're about. In this day and age, because everybody broadcasts, everybody thinks you've got to be an extrovert, you've got to be super duper, and you've got to be everything else, yeah? But no, that's not confidence. That's just being flash, being boom, yeah, being, here I am. That's not confidence. Confidence comes from a deeper inner awareness of yourself. You get confidence when you fail, and you get confident when you try, yeah? When you try and you fail, you think, oh my gosh, I failed. But you've gained something because you've tried something you may never have tried before and realized that you can do it. So you gain your confidence by increments of success steps. So you evaluated success. That's what it means. Okay, it's not going to come overnight. Confidence does not come overnight. I'm not going to get too much into who I am and talk at you, but when I was younger, I wasn't shy inside, but I was shy on the outside. I would talk to people. I'd let things happen around me. I had all sorts of conceptions of people being bigger and better than myself and stuff, but my confidence wasn't there. I was quite unconfident in terms of speaking out with people, being out in groups of people, being involved in projects and outside of my comfort zone, and I was very, very shy and very underconfident. And it took me a number of years of just developing stuff to realize where those confidence factors were, and I'm sure a lot of you feel like that. Some of you older, some of you younger, but I'm absolutely certain that we've all had to develop our confidence. And even if we're naturally endowed with a sunny personality and a bit of go-getterishness and a bit of fightingness, like we were talking about the other night, Matt, you still have to find your confident feet, yeah? And your children, you can see that in when they try to find their confidence in, say, football with Karen's young man, Alfie. He's gotten more confident each time he's done something, more success. He's just gone and got this wonderful accolade, and the whole group of them have. And it gives him confidence. It buffers them. It's cool. So that's the first thing about confidence, and I'm not going to labor it too much. It's pretty obvious, but we're going to sort of rock with it. Yeah, so Nick, I'm going to go to you because you put the slides together so beautifully.
Okay, so there's a couple of things about confidence that you need to be aware of. The first thing is self-confidence in your control. Well, the easiest way to understand that is to understand that you have a choice whether you are a thermometer or a thermostat. A thermometer tells you what the temperature is, whereas a thermostat actually controls what the temperature is. So you have a choice, and that's what the confidence is about from that point of view, and that's the control you have. So what that means in practical terms, because these are practical steps that you can take. So what happens in that situation is an event happens, an action happens, and that action generates an emotion within you. So you're driving the car, a person pulls out of a junction, cuts across you, you have to brake really, really hard, and that creates an emotion, okay? So at that point, as you feel that emotion, you are being a thermometer. Your environment has generated your emotion. Now that works in reverse. So the action can generate the emotion. So if now that's happened, you can continue with that emotion and let that emotion go forwards and have a whole road rage episode, or you can consciously decide to take another action and just take a breath and just breathe your way through it until the emotion settles down. It's a simple conscious action to bring the emotion back down. Now, actions create the emotions. You see actors do this when you watch them on TV, when you watch them in films. If they are a character actor, they are taking certain actions, and those actions are generating emotions within them, which make us feel the emotions they're feeling, if they're any good at it. So in that situation, they take the action which generates the emotion. Now that's being the thermostat. That's controlling the emotion. So understanding that certain actions create certain emotions is the first place to start when you control this, okay? So the first action to start with is to take care of yourself. If you're going to feel good about...
Before we move on, Nick, 1 minute, let me put my hand up. How many of you feel confident? Put a 1 in the comment box. I would like to know, because, you know, do you feel confident? Okay. That is a nice analogy about the rest of bloodthirsty. How many of you feel confident? You put your hands up. You're like, I don't care. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yep. That's good. That's nice to hear that. Okay. Yeah. Lovely. Good. Excellent. Thank you. So most of you feel confident. That's nice to hear. A couple of you not, and I'm not going to mention that. That's cool. All right, nice. I like that. So that's a good place to start, isn't it? That we feel like we have confidence, because I feel that people don't ask people that question. They just go bulldozing over the top of it. Now, I love the analogy, Nick, of the thermostat. That's a goodie. Yeah, we'll move on.
So moving on to the first action you can take. The very first place to start is with you. If you want to feel more confident, even in your own private space, you need to feel better about you. You need to take the time to groom yourself. You need to take the time to dress nicely. You need to take the time to look, feel, and smell good with you, okay? And then when you look, feel, and smell good with you, okay, you might not be confident enough yet to project that, but ideally take selfies of you and get likes and comments on social media. You see, what happens is, in the era that we're in, people get very, very good at doing this, and it's a very, very good way of building confidence. Because if lots and lots of people tell you how cool you are, how good you are, how sexy you look, or whatever, then in that situation, it's going to make you feel better about you. And at the same time, in that situation, it builds your confidence, because it puts you out there, and it puts you out in a situation where your friends are interacting with you and they're building you up, okay? And your network of people is building you up. So if you look at things that we all post, when we post on our profiles, when we post in the groups, and various people like what we post, even the fact that as we put this training up, Eric Masson, the owner of the whole company, likes the fact that we're doing this training, builds our confidence that we're on track with our training, okay? So it's little things like that that make the difference to build your confidence. It all starts with that side of things.
Now, there's a precursor to that, Nick, so I'm going to talk about it, because obviously it's a self. Now, some of you know this, some of you don't, but I'm going to introduce this in. I'm a fashion stylist come art director person. I've done a lot of commercial work with people. So I've brought people who apparently look great and should feel great forwards into camera, and a lot of times they don't feel good inside, you know, so they got a great self-image apparently on the outside, but they don't have a good self-image on the inside. Now, Matt said he went up to the field. I heard him say that he was all dressed nice to get involved with something this morning, and you know it was all boggy and horrible on this golf course. But he went and made himself look nice. And a couple of you've had your hair done. I saw all that. But you know, you've got to put yourself out there. So when I go out there, as you can clearly see, because I'm quite colourful, I get a lot of compliments. I get a lot of not sexual necessarily, all compliments of colour and tone and things I cover, and it gives me confidence to go forwards. Now, I wasn't always like that, so for some of you who are in the room who are thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can put myself out there enough, or I don't know what people are going to say about me. If they say something negative about you, it's on them, all right, because they don't understand stuff. They feel bad themselves, and you're actually showing them up for what they are. That's why haters exist. You know what I mean? They don't know where their space is, and they're in other people's spaces. All right. And it's more deep than that, but that's the concept. So you've got to almost have that like a water off a duck's back. And I'm the finest one to talk. I'm quite sensitive about things inside. Nick has never been like that. Nick's always had a good self-image. He'll turn up in a bathrobe and he won't care, and it'll be okay, and it's just good. But you know, so you've got to know where your self-image is when you present yourself. And in the media age that we live in, you are absolutely going to presenting yourself somewhere, somehow, at some point, even if you don't think you're ever going to do it. Yeah. And the blokes are going to be less likely to always come forward. Not all blokes. Some blokes are quite comfy, but a lot of blokes are resistant to come back forward to their image and have compliments, if you like. So I just want to put those little parameters in there, because I've done a lot of work with it. I used to work with people who've had all sorts of illnesses and bring on their self-esteem and their self-worth and their self-image. So I am talking from experience on a much deeper level, but it's cool. I love it. So yeah, if you want to look like that lady, or if you even like that lady, the concept is, seriously now, you've just got to get that conceptualization out there. That's great, Nick. I like that. It's cool. Yeah.
Now, this leads to the next step of liking what you see, and that's the whole point of this next slide. Is self-image is so much deeper than what you see. Self-image is all about, or the self is many pieces. There is the self-image, the self-ideal, the self-esteem, self-worth, self-love. There's many parts to the self. So the superficial front of the self is only one part of the process. Behind the front, as Christina quite rightly pointed out, we've worked with some incredibly successful, very handsome and beautiful models who should feel very, very good about themselves, but inside themselves, they actually feel very bad about themselves. So self-confidence is much more than skin deep. As you go past how you look, the self-image, you then start to get into other things, and then you start to get into the deeper understanding. As you look at this training, you will be looking at it on a screen, which is made up of pixels, individual little LED lights or pixels that identify the whole picture. And that's how we're made up. We're made up of a whole picture of us. And we have a pixel that relates to every aspect of us. And that's actually what makes the whole self-image up. We have a self-concept about every aspect of us. We have a self-concept of how we look, which in today's internet age, social media age is very, very important. And a lot of self-confidence issues relate to the way people look and the way they feel about how they look. So that's a big part of it. But we have a self-concept for everything. We have a self-concept for how good a golfer we are, and how good a driver we are, or how good a runner we are, or how fit we are, or how our weight is, or whatever. And even if we don't have a self-concept, so let's say you don't have a self-concept for how good you are at skydiving, that is in itself a self-concept. The fact that it's a question mark is a self-concept. And so all of this makes up the self. And in there, like many of you have seen, when screens get damaged on phones and things like that, the screen develops a crack, there will be parts of the self-concept that will have cracks or flaws or things like that in them, okay? And the whole point of this picture is when people look at themselves, and I don't mean physically, when in their mind's eye, they think of themselves and they imagine themselves, what happens is the human being is drawn to all those flaws. That's part of our survival mechanism. What happens when we go out into the world, if you go and pick some food in the wild, you pick some berries off a bush, and there's something really bad on one of them, the brain is wired to identify the fault really, really fast, because if you eat it, you'll die. So the brain is wired to pick up the fault. And all that happens with that part of the brain is when people have a self-esteem problem or a self-confidence problem, that part of the brain has internalized. Instead of looking out into the world, it's turned back on themselves. And it's realizing that the vast majority of that piece of fruit you just picked off the bush is actually wonderful. And there's just that tiny bit that's not, and you might have to just cut that off or put that to one side or whatever. And it's the same with ourselves, is we just have parts of us that we maybe don't like, and so we don't emphasize those points, and we do emphasize other points. Christina again said about being a fashion stylist. What I've come to learn watching that in action is that you take somebody and you accentuate their good parts and you take the focus off the bad parts. And that's all that fashion styling fundamentally is about, okay? So you've got the self-concept. Now, the self-concept then is controlled by how you feel. Remember what I said earlier on about the actions and the emotions. How you feel about yourself determines how you interact with the world. It determines everything about you from that point of view. So if you feel based on that crack in the glass, that flaw, then you will feel bad about yourself and you will project that feeling bad into the world. If you focus on the rest of everything that's good, then you'll focus the good in the world. And there's certain habits that we all need to develop and reinforce and have for a lifetime. And one of the habits that I learned a long time ago was to keep my face to the sunshine so I didn't see the shadows. The shadows were always there. It wasn't a case of denying they were there. It was a case of focusing on the sunshine, because what I focused on was what I projected into the world, okay? And that's what happens in this situation. As you project yourself into the world, and as you get more compliments and so on, your negative perspectives of yourself will change back into your positive perspectives of yourself, okay?
Can I cover a point next? I'm going to recover a little bit there because I want to back to you, because what we're talking about as well is faking it until you make it sometimes. That's a concept, isn't it? Your self-esteem may be very unworthy. I've always felt very unworthy because of my childhood. I was criticized half to death, literally. And you've got to find that space where you're bridging the gap with that. And that can come through the common sense things of self-talk, through visualizations. And we talked about these a bit in the past, and I know a number of people know about that. And in today's society, there's a lot we know about, but what we don't do is pull the pieces together. So when you've taught for a long time and you've coached and you've worked with a lot of people like we have, Nick and I, and Liam respectively, you will find that things actually sort of, people have pieces, but they don't bring them together. They have little bits and bobs, but they don't understand it. They don't understand that they've got self-image, self-worth, self-esteem. They don't understand what that means, or they read some cheesy quote that's been half-arsed up there by some person who's readapted it, who doesn't really know what they're talking about. Okay, so you've got to understand that these are all the things, you know, you've got to bring it all together. And if somebody says something to you and they say, "Oh, I'm too short," and they try and get that in front, and they're saying something like that, and they're trying to make a joke out of something, that's because they feel inferior and they feel devalued. And over time, you get to understand that people are just being people, and people are actually genuinely really nice, but they're like little kids in a big adult body with all of these things going on inside them. All right. And what you're not able to do these days is express yourself and have, if you like, that perspective of you, put it out there easily, because we're all in fear of maybe being reprimanded or something's going to happen to us. And we've got to put ourselves out there anyway. Now, Nick's put together some incredibly nice slides. So I'm going to hand it back over to him because he's been busy putting this together. So.
Okay, so I'm going to move on with the next one. So now we're going to get a bit deeper into this whole subject. Okay, so where does our chink in our armor come from? Where do our self-image, self-esteem, self-worth, self-love, self-ideal, where does it all come from? Well, it comes from childhood. It comes from childhood because you start right at the very beginning. As a toddler, you've got a suicide, like a death wish, and you touch everything and you try and put your hand in the fire and you try and do this and you try and do that. And the terrible twos are where your parents are actually trying to keep you alive. And they're saying, don't touch that, and don't do that, and don't do that, and don't do that. And that starts to build fears. It starts to build boundaries. It starts to build walls around what you can and can't do. Now, that's fine when you're 2, because you don't know what's good for you, what's not, what's dangerous when it's not. But as we get older, as Christina just pointed out, we become 22, carrying around the belief structures of a 2-year-old. We become 32 and 42 and 52 and 62 and 72 and end up dying, and we still got the belief structures of the 2-year-old. So what happens is we have to change the things that have been indoctrinated. Now, more has been indoctrinated throughout time because there's a thing in life called the 80-20 rule. And the 80-20 rule basically says that 80% of something generates 20% of the results, and 20% of something generates 80% of the results. Turn that another way around, it means that 80% of what a person does in anything at all doesn't work, and 20% does. So 80%, if you like, is failure, as people call it. Now, personally, I don't like the word failure, because what happens is you do something and you get feedback. I reach out and I touch the camera, I get feedback from the camera, okay? That doesn't mean that it's failure or success, it is simply feedback. And the feedback is simply telling me what I need to do differently to be able to guide the camera. If I want to turn the camera, rather than touch it like that, I might have to touch it either side, okay? So there are specific things that work well and specific things that don't work well. Problem is, we weren't born with an instruction manual. We were born with no idea what we were supposed to do, usually with parents who had no idea what they were supposed to do. And so we end up doing a lot of things wrong. And so we grow up with all these beliefs: I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. We grow up with a lot of can'ts. The reality is that we can do anything that we want to do. Most things that we do in life, the first time we do them, it doesn't work well. Sometimes the second and third and the fourth time we do it, it doesn't work well. Some people are very quick learners. Some people are gifted in certain areas. Some people are less gifted in areas, so it takes them longer to learn. But what happens is, by repetition, the process goes right instead of wrong. By repetition, you can do it instead of can't do it. Now, why is the repetition so important? And for our MMA person on here, and for anybody else who is doing something to a high level of perfection, it's because what happens is the subconscious brain, which is the biggest part of the brain, by the way, the subconscious is the biggest part of the brain. That processes most of the information. The first thing that happens is you're listening to this, you're watching this. And as you're listening and watching, the sensory input is going into your brain. It's being filtered out at the back of the neck by a thing called the reticular cortex. The reticular cortex filters out everything that is not useful or dangerous. If it is not useful, if it is not dangerous, you will not hear it, you will not see it, you will not remember it, okay? It won't get through into the brain. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, because if it did, if all of the sensory input we had actually got through the brain, it would drive us insane. There's just too much for our brain to process. But even that gets through the reticular cortex The next thing it's got to do is it's got to be processed by our brain. But our conscious mind is very, very slow. So our conscious mind only processes about 15%, and our subconscious processes 85% of everything we do, moment by moment, okay? So our subconscious is controlling us. We think we're in control. Our ego would kid us into we're in control. We're not, okay? Our subconscious is in control, but our conscious mind can now take an action that can control the subconscious mind. And the action is our belief structure. Our belief structure is so, so critical. And you change your belief structure of I can't to I can, I am not to I am, all those kind of things. You change all those belief structures with what you say to yourself. Your brain is constantly running an internal dialogue of what you say to yourself. You know, some people might turn around, and I've heard people who are on this call say things like, oh, that's just my luck. But you know what? My luck's always really good. So when I hear people say that, I wonder what they mean by that, because when I think that, it's like, well, yeah, luck is really good, isn't it? So from that point of view, it depends what programming you're running in your subconscious, and you can reprogram your subconscious.
Can I interject a second just before we jump on to what we're going to do? Now, most of you will be bringing in your parents' words in your head from your childhood, whether you think you are still or not. You could be 40 years of age, you still probably are. And you've got to recognize what's you and what's not you before you ever get into the next step, which Nick is going to cover very articulately, about how you reprogram that mind. Now, somebody said earlier today, we were listening to another, if you like, Zoom, and she was talking about the fact that you brainwash. I don't like that word at all. And I think that we actually reprogram with our own knowing what we need to know about at the time that it's right for us. We're not in the position where we're in our lives putting in things that we're not ready for. Everybody comes to a point of readiness. Some of you today will listen to this and actually action some of these points. Not all of them, probably. Some of you have already actioned some of these points. But the concept is you're only ever at the point that you need to be, knowing what you know about what's come before you and what you've done, and getting to that point. Now, if you've got people around you who are negative, who are going to actually they're going to sabotage this next process, you need to be absolutely 110%. Yeah, that's right. I love this guy. This bloodthirsty is cool. Tyler, you're awesome, buddy. I love you. And the Americans are very, very good in terms of knowing some of these things. They talk about it a lot. We obviously, the MMA guy we got on is knowing this thing. But you've got to understand that you're taking you with you on your journey. So you've got to be aware of what's going on when you start to reprogram it, or what point that starts in your mind, and then go back to that point and think, I am worthy, I am great, I am beautiful, I have abundance, I am lucky, you know, or whatever it is that, you know, your thing is, you know, and it's usually much deeper than that. It's actually a little bit more complicated. And Nick's going to cover a little bit about how you do that now. So how many of you would like to hear how you get into a better mindset every day? Yeah, hopefully most of you, but if you don't, you know, it's okay. Yeah, cool. All right, and I know some of you know it, and I know some of you teach it, but I do believe that we as leaders here, also some of us are leading groups of people, we need to be mindful of what we're teaching people every single day. So even if you know it, and I appreciate some of you do, I still want you to apply it properly, okay? All right, cool. Nick, over to you. Brilliant.
Now that's really important, actually, because to know and not to do is not to know. And a lot of people think they know, but they don't do. And to do is the key with this. It really is. You have to break down every single belief that was indoctrinated into you from childhood onwards and identify whether that belief serves you. Because those pixels, those individual beliefs, are the individual beliefs that are going to determine whether that that whole thing looks like a good picture or not a good picture. And so what happens is this process is about changing individual beliefs. So it's understanding, first of all, this graphic I've got here says I'm the author of my story. And that's so true. The first place to start is to realize that you are in control, that it is your life, it's nobody else's, it's your story. Your story has to make sense to you. It doesn't have to make sense to me. It doesn't have to make sense to Christina. It doesn't have to make sense to your parents but it has to make sense to you. So you are the author of your story. And when you author that story, there are characteristics that you're going to want to build into your personality, if you like, into your character. And this is where the self-ideal comes into place. Who do you want to become? What characteristics do you want? And this is really important because the characteristics that you want in you are the things that you have to indoctrinate into you. And you may not be sure of the characteristics, which is why reading, self-development, listening, watching certain kinds of videos, personal development videos, things like that, that is so critical as a daily activity, because out of each one, you'll take a little nugget. You might watch 20, 30 minutes of a YouTube video of Will Smith talking about how to be successful. And you might take one piece of information out of that whole 20, 30 minutes. But that piece of information will carry with you and will become part of your self-ideal, okay? And as part of your whole structure, your self-ideal, then in that situation, you build that. So using Will Smith and that self-ideal as an example, his father, the story he tells is his father knocked down a wall and then got him and his brother to rebuild that wall. And he had to build that wall brick by brick, make that wall solid and make that wall stand. And the whole point about it was he learned the process of building something brick by brick by brick by brick. And that story sticks with me because that's how life is. You build something brick by brick by brick. You build a structure and so on. Now that sticks with me. That might not resonate with you. That might not be the thing that you pick up. But my point is that you will pick up things that author for your story. And so that's why that's really important. And as you identify the characteristics of the people, the work ethic that Will Smith advocates, or other aspects of other people that you look at or you admire, or other things from that point of view, they will give you these characteristics. I'm resilient, I'm growing, I am enough, I believe in myself, I trust myself. These are the things. And they have to be first person. They have to be I or me. The subconscious doesn't identify anybody else. It doesn't identify me and Christina as husband and wife. The subconscious only identifies me. Remember, the subconscious is running my entire survival process. So it's looking after me. So therefore, from that point of view, the first person is where you start. It has to be positive. It has to say, I am something. I do trust myself. I do believe in myself. I am confident. I have good self-esteem. If you are trying to not be something, then the brain interprets that in reverse. If I am not something, the brain actually interprets it as I am it not. And it separates the word not and it interprets it as I am. So if you say, I am not a smoker, that actually interprets as I am a smoker in the subconscious mind. So it always has to be positive, and it always has to be present tense. It always has to be now. The subconscious has no concept of time. It has no past, it has no future, it only has this moment in time. And the subconscious is doing everything for you. It's running your heart, running your lungs, running your blood pressure, running your kidneys, your liver, your intestines. It's running every part of you now, in that moment in time. And it's making all of the adjustments of all of the chemicals all over your body now, at that moment in time, okay? So it doesn't know the difference. So you, in order to reprogram the subconscious, you have to do that. Now you have to understand that the subconscious is full of past. Everything that the subconscious contains is all past memories of everything you've done, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. It's all past memories. Now remember, 80% of those are bad. So because 80% of them are bad, painful, difficult, unhappy, whatever you want to call them, then the vast majority of the programming in the subconscious mind is that way. And so therefore, you've got to take it from that to that. You've got to make the subconscious, you've got to force the subconscious to see things from a very positive point of view and see you as the person that you want to be. And when you say that you are something, the subconscious will kick back and say, no, you're not. So it means you can't say that I'm here and then I want to go here. The subconscious can't make that giant leap. So you actually make the leap in steps. You change the belief structure from here to here, then you change the belief structure from here to here, and then you change it from here to here. You don't go from here all the way to here in one go, because for the subconscious, it just cannot process that level of movement, okay? So you move step by step. That's why it's daily activities. That's why it's consistency. You write these out. These are your private story.
Can I interject a second? Because we've got some great stuff coming in the chat, and I totally agree. I agree that Matt and Tyler and some of the guys that are contributing here, brilliant. Okay, we've got some other nice points that I wanted to emphasize around what Nick's actually said, because obviously, you know, that's correct. He probably tried doing it yourselves in the past. You've got to emotionalize this as well, which is a point that Tyler brought up. You've got to actually have this, and I've done this for years because I actually have to start here by completely almost reprogramming the entirety of me. But the first person, the positive and the present tense, okay, we got that bit right. But what you've got to do is you've got to feel it as well. You've got to feel it as well. Now, when we work with a lot of sports people, they're cool on this one. They get it. They get this big time. Is you've got to feel that good feeling with it. If you feel that you want to feel worthy, I feel worthy. I know when I was worthy. I remember a time when somebody mentioned that I was a worthy person. I helped them. I was kind. You know, you've got to sort of almost go that little extra bit. Okay. So when I say to Karen Pagani, I'll say to her, you know, you've got a big heart, and she'll go, yeah, I know, because she knows that, because she's emotionalized that, she's had experiences through that, and her self-esteem knows that, and I know she knows that, so I can use that very, very much within this framework. But you know, you've got some great things here. You've got great books backing this up, great audios. But I want to precursor it with something, because I've taught, Nick and I have taught for many, many years on these subjects. Okay, you've got to take from good sources. There's a lot of self-appointed experts out there these days, and I'm not going to name it, half of them, because they're just boring. But you want to go to the people who've done it for a long time. You know, all of your big stars, your all-star people who know what it is to think properly. You know, I know off the top of my head, I could get Liam to put them in there. Liam, do me a favor, buddy. Can you put some of the top guys that they should be listening to in the chat for me, please? You know, just get your head straight. Thank you, Liam. And so we've got that to play with. And you've also got to think about things. There's a great book, What You Say When You Talk to Yourself, by Shad Helmstetter, which is the all-time classic, like listening to Napoleon Hill. There are things that you can use to help you do it properly, not half, and remember my expression earlier, half-assed. You've got to do it right. It's your brain. You are actually effectively working on your little brain pan there, okay? And you've got to be aware, and I know some of you have got very negative people around you, that when you're doing it, you've got to have your own space to do it. And you may have to stand, as stupid as it sounds, in the mirror, repeating these things back. And you've got to repeat them back in a way that you can accept them. You can't say, I'm super thin if you're fat. You've got to say, I'm getting slimmer every day. I'm feeling better every day. I'm feeling fitter every day. You can't be jumping, you know, hoops. I can't be saying I'm bloodthirsty Miller. I'm going to wrangle some people, because it's so far from my paradigm of understanding who I am that I've got to say, well, maybe I'll start by, I'm good at sports. I'm good with athletics. I'm great at kicking people. So maybe I'll do kickboxing. My brain's got to accept that I can do it. All right. And so these are important points. I don't want to go too much into it because we've got to watch the time, and Nick's got a lot to cover. Great people, great books, and emotionalized. Great points, guys. I absolutely love what you're sharing. I really mean that, by the way. It's fabulous, absolutely fabulous. Nick, over to you again, please. Sorry about that.
Okay. Now, that's great. There's fantastic feedback. Now, the emotionalization is really important. It's probably the most critical, most important part of the entire training, because everything that you're carrying with you through all those years and all the things that are programmed in your subconscious are emotional memories. A memory isn't logical, a memory is emotional. And it's the emotion that's important. And the subconscious can't tell the difference between a real and a vividly imagined emotion. So when you're working through this self-talk, these positive affirmations, you need to vividly imagine, I'm getting slimmer all the time. I'm getting fitter all the time. I really believe in myself. I really trust myself. I have great confidence. I have great self-esteem. You really need to emotionalize it, okay? And often when we're doing this over the years, you know, you might do it with your eyes closed and you're actually seeing in your mind's eye the aspects of these things so that you can fully feel that experience, okay? Now, through the day, you're going to slip because it's great to do this every morning and every night. But you know what? There's a whole day in between, and there's all those negative people in between, and there's all those cars that are going to pull out with you in front of you in between. So how do you handle it in between? Well, the law of substitution is the key, okay? Now, we talk about old speak and the experts. This teaching goes back a good 100+ years. And in Google land, it's been changed. People translate this and they change this for their own ends and for their own purposes to be able to sell courses and sell things. But the law of substitution is a very, very old law that was identified a long, long time ago, despite what you would think it was if you looked it up on Google right now. And the law of substitution basically means that at any moment in time, the brain can't process two things at the same time. So every time you think of one thing, you can substitute it with something else. So classic example that people use is the word problem can be a negative word. So you substitute the word problem for challenge or for opportunity. And the negative feeling that goes with the word problem isn't there anymore because you don't feel like it's a problem. You feel like it's a challenge, or you feel like it's an opportunity. You feel like it's full of possibilities, not full of problems. So the paradigm changes from negative to positive. You substitute all the time. Now that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of being conscious of your own thoughts. It's a thing that takes a long time to apply. A lot of gurus and Buddhists and Zen masters spend a lifetime learning to observe their thoughts and then let the negative thoughts pass by or swap the negative thoughts out. But if you are with negative people or you are in negative situations, you need to learn to use this law, okay? You need to be able to say to that negative person, even if you don't want to get into conflict with them, say in your own mind a positive version. Remember, there are always shadows, but you keep your face to the sunshine. And some people will always see a cloud in every silver lining. And so from that point of view, you want to be able to always see the silver lining. You always want to swap the one for the other. The moment your brain starts to go towards the negative, you want to substitute it towards the positive, okay? And it's a habit. It's like every other habit. You start off and it's difficult, and you know, across a day, you might have 100 or 1,000 negative interactions. But during that day by day, as you practice this law, over time, you'll have less and less negative interactions because you'll substitute them out for positive ones. And that's a really important law.
And Nick, I'm going to interject again a little bit because I'm talking about the practical as well. So yeah. When you think about how you interpret the world, and you all know some of you are visual, some of you are feely, kinesthetic, and some of you are auditory, you hear the world. So some of you hear the world, some of you see the world, some of you feel the world, okay? And I'm sure you're pretty aware of some of that way that it comes into you. So though I look visual, I actually auditory kinesthetic, so I hear and feel the world. So when I interpret my emotionalization, I've got to make that in my reality. So in other words, I've got to interpret that substitution into one negative feeling into a positive feeling. So a good memory, a bad memory gets to be a good memory with a feeling and things like that. So you've got to start to think about how you interpret this. There's no wrong or right. You've got to remember the old saying that God doesn't make rubbish. You guys are all perfect just the way you are. You've just got to find the spaces that you need to adjust, okay? And I've learned this, and I've had to use the law of substitution incredibly because so many negative people in my actual life. I'm sure a lot of you can relate with that. And, you know, so you've got to get that magic happening there. You know, Nick's auditory, he tends to use words. Liam's quite kinesthetic auditory, but you might be visual. So you might need to see something better. And the sugar's fabulous. You need to see, maybe you need to see it. So it's something, you know, nasty that you don't like to think about, envision flowers or a fast car or something better than whatever is in your head. And you need to do that before you go to bed, because what you initialize overnight manifests in the morning. It's actually one of the laws of manifestation and resonance, but we won't get into that today because that's a huge subject and people misrepresent that enormously. But what we're going to talk about today is some of the key points here. And I know that you've all are partaking in this, and I really love it, by the way. So again, I love the feedback. Okay, so over to you, Nick. So it's the next slide.
Okay, so we've talked about this, designing the person you need to become. So one of your goals isn't to become rich or anything like that. The goal is actually to be happy and to have peace of mind, to be a whole, full, fulfilled human being. That's actually everybody's goal. Whatever that means to that person, ultimately the emotion behind it is that sense of peace of mind, that sense of happiness, that sense of satisfaction, that sense of wholeness. So you need to design the person you need to become. You need to spend time reading biographies so that you can copy the success habits. And if you don't read, listen to audiobooks, you know, synopsis, stories on YouTube, whatever. But you need to get with those success habits and you need to design that. And this is really, really important. Your dream has to be bigger than your fears. As you change yourself, what will happen is if your fears are here and then your dream is only down here, in other words, your reason why, your drive, your motivations down here, you won't take the actions to achieve what you want to achieve. So you have to build your why, your reason, your motivation, your dream, so it's higher than your fears. And that's really important because as you go through this is something that takes work, it takes effort, it takes discipline. So it takes motivation. So you have to have something that you're going towards, this person that you're becoming. You have to see tiny little successes here of how you've become a little bit more confident today than you were yesterday, how you handle that situation better. And having cheerleaders in your environment is really, really helpful. Some people are blessed with it, some people aren't. Some people are surrounded by negative people and you have to be your own cheerleader. But some of you have, you know, friends or relationships, partners or whatever who are supportive. And if you do, then in that situation, them telling you how much better you did, them noticing, them paying attention and doing that helps your confidence no end. Okay, so that's really important. And as you go forwards, you will learn who you are. You'll learn your strengths, your weaknesses, your personality, your behaviors, and you'll replace the habits that don't serve you. Okay. And there are so many. There are so many habits from the moment you prepare for bed, the moment your one day starts to end and you start to wind down for going to bed and getting up the next day doesn't start the next day. The next day actually starts the moment you finish. So the moment you finish today and you start to wind down, settle down, and get ready for going to bed, that's when tomorrow starts. And you will start to see habits that you have, things that you do, things that you put in your mind before you go to sleep will manifest the next day because you'll put them in your mind. Your brain will then file them in your subconscious, in your dreams. Your brain will then add those to its repertoire of its memory. And because it adds them to its repertoire of its memory, it's what it will replicate the next day. And because it's the most recent memory, it's more at the forefront of the subconscious, so it's more easily accessible. Okay, so understanding that, understanding your personality, we all have different styles. Some people are more introvert, more extrovert, some people are more people orientated, more task orientated. None of it is right or wrong. There are no such things as right or wrong. You are the unique you. You are the special you. You need to identify who you are Your goal is to become the best you that you can possibly be. That is your goal, okay? And replace the habits that are stopping you being the best you with the habits that make you the best you, okay?
I covered that a little bit, Nick, because it took years for us to find our authentic voice, our authentic selves, our authentic uses, yeah? And these days, we don't really care what people think, in a way that we're always nice to people, we respect them, we treat them as how we want to be treated, obviously. Hopefully that goes without saying, but we do have found our voices, our selves, our truisms, our space. I had a lovely conversation with Matt the other evening about this, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really feel that, you know, you need to find who you are, and your personality is unique. And Jodie, if you're still with me, I think you are your unique self. There's nobody going to tell you one way or the other. You need to ignore what they say to you if you're feeling the way you've been feeling. It doesn't matter. You are wonderful just the way you are. The personality traits serve you as long as you're using them correctly. You've got strengths and you've got weaknesses. You've got your archetypical light and dark sides. We all have the Jungian concepts. You need to put aside the shadow self and bring forward the lighter self. And if the lighter self has other wonderful components to it, you're calm, or you're vivacious, or you're strong, or you've got it, whatever it is, it's got to come forwards and not go backwards. And every day you've got to serve that master, if you like, the one that is your authentic self, with your strengths and what you believe to be true to you. If you're a fighter, wow, that's the one, yeah. If I don't know, if you're a lover, whatever, it doesn't matter. It just is whatever your thing is, okay? Bring it forward. And joking aside, you just got to bring yourself forward into it. And if people love you or hate you, let it fall where it may, because it's their problem, not yours, okay? The people who resonate with you will always connect and love you to bits. And those who are not right for you, they go away, eventually just fade into the distance. And I know that sounds cheesy, but this is how it works. Anyway, I'm going to hand back to Nick because he's covering some brilliant points here.
Okay, so the next point is simply a quote, because it's to watch your thoughts. Remember the law of substitution, everything we've covered so far. Watch your thoughts moment by moment, day by day, because your thoughts become your words. Your words, you've got to watch those because they become your actions. What you say is what you end up doing. You got to watch your actions because repetitive actions become your habits. And you've got to watch your habits because your habits become your character. And you've got to watch your character because that becomes your destiny. And that is probably the most profound thing of the whole thing. You want this as your destiny, then it all starts with how you think. And that is really important. Now, I'm going to move on a more practical level.
One more thing, Nick, I'm going to ask a question in the group. Can you put it in the box what you think character is? It's a little test, but it's a cute one. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think character is, or maybe some of you be right, some of you wrong. There's no necessarily wrong or right answers, but it'd be interesting to see what people think character is. And then, Nick, if you could continue with the next bit, please, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Okay. So competence. Now, competence builds confidence. Why? Because if we're good at something, we get good feedback. Remember what I did earlier about the camera? If I'm good at moving the camera, I get good feedback. If I'm bad at moving the camera, I drop it, you lose the picture, I get bad feedback, okay? So competence builds confidence. So you need to learn some skills in the background. Remember what I said about personal development? 20 to 30 minutes every day, personal development, day in, day out. You feed your body every single day. You drink fluid every single day. You need to feed your mind every single day, and you need to fill it with the right stuff, okay? And from that point of view, there are skills you need to learn. You need to learn focus, a laser-like focus. So if you're spending a period of time on something, you are 110% focused on that one thing, whatever that is, whether that's your job, whether that's the time with your children, whether that's time with your spouse, whether that's this business, doesn't matter what it is, but you need to be one mind, one focus in that place. That is what you're doing, and that is only what you're doing. And you are attentively listening, you are attentively paying attention, you are completely immersed in that experience and that experience alone for that period of time, whether that be 30 seconds or 30 minutes or 5 hours, you are focused. And that is important. The next skill to learn is a skill of urgency, to do things now. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, and you get the feeling that you need to write down your self-talk, or you need to start designing yourself, or you need to take certain actions in your life, then you need to do it now. Not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, now. The do it now attitude is critical. The whole point about anything is the memory fades over time. So if you think back and today, you think of today, think about what you did yesterday. Well, you can probably remember that reasonably well. What about what you did the day before and the day before that? What you did a week ago, what you did 2 weeks ago, what you did 3 weeks ago, what you were doing a month ago. A month ago, this is Saturday, a month ago, Saturday, what were you doing? Now, it's the longer you go back in time, the harder it is to remember. Well, that works the other way around. The further you go in time, the more you can't remember all the little details. So do it now attitude is really important. People skills. Well, we live on a planet with billions and billions of people, nearly 8 billion people on the planet. So one of the things that you need to do is get good at dealing with people, get good at working with people, understanding where they're coming from, understanding their point of view, understanding what they want out of life so that you can help them get what they want. This business is all about helping people get what they want. If you help enough other people get what they want, you'll have what you want. So you take your eyes off yourself and you focus on helping the people get what they want. In order to do that, you have to have skill to understand them and work with them. Because you're going to be working with quite a few people, you need to be organized. You need to have a good organizational structure of how you're organizing your life, how you're organizing your time, and you need to be well organized. You need to learn good organizational skills. You need to be prepared. So when something's going to happen, so something like this, you're on a Zoom like this, you're learning, you need to be prepared. You need to have something to take notes with, just to start with. You might not take notes, but what if something comes into your mind? You think, oh yeah, what about such and such? And you've got nothing to write it down with. By the time this is all over, you've forgotten it again. So you need to be prepared. Whatever you do, preparation is one of the keys to success. And you need to learn the skill of gratitude. And gratitude is a skill. It really is, because from that point of view, we all experience all sorts of difficulties in our life, but in every set of circumstances, there will be a seed of equal or greater benefit if only we can see it. So learning how to see it, learning how to find it, learning how to be grateful for all the different things that happen. And the more you're grateful, the more things will come into your life to be grateful for. Okay.
Gratitude. Can you get a second there, because that's true with gratitude. And I'm watching the guys, feedback here, and there's some super things going on, and there's some really good deep thinking. And I think that we've got to put in here that we come from different cultures and different eras. And one of the things that happens is when we're guiding people, if you come back from, I don't know, the 60s, the 70s, or early 80s, there wasn't all this information readily available. But assuming now you're 35 and you're of that 30 age group, you're going to have a lot of information at your fingertips, and you're going to bring in different dimensions to your understanding to other people. When you co-create with people, and you're grateful for that, because that's what reminded me, and what I was reading down there, is you create together. So you share. So Matt's come in today and he shared a whole host of wonderful things, and he's building Gareth up, and Gareth's a wonderful person, and Matt, you're a wonderful person, and you're co-creating together, and it's a wonderful experience. Robin's noted there's some wonderful things coming off Karen. I'm looking at Gareth's definition of character. I quite liked. I must admit, Gareth, well done. But it was just this concept of building together. Teamwork does make the dream work. It's cliched, it's even almost nasty these days because everybody uses it, but there's no I in team, obviously. And so you guys working together is one of the biggest things I've seen today, and I really love it, and I'm grateful for you sharing with one another. That's interesting. As Nick goes through these, you do need all of these things. These are practical tools, and we're going to end it shortly on a couple of slides, and then we're going to open it up a little bit because there's a couple of cute things in here I'd like people to share. But yeah, it's brilliant. Okay, so Nick, sorry about that, but I have to interject. This is brilliant stuff coming in the chat. It's superb.
Excellent. Well, that's good. It's good. It's stimulating that
Very fabulous.
thinking as well. So moving on from that, there are two enemies to this whole process. Okay. One is procrastination, putting things off. Remember, I said urgency is the key. Well, urgency is the key because procrastination is the thief of time. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. What happens is tomorrow never comes. And so what happens in that situation is people who put things off accomplish a lot less in their life. So that's the first thing you want to watch out. And it's really insidious. It kind of creeps up on you because there's lots of other things that come into your life and, oh, I'll do that, and then I'll do that, and I'll do that, and I'll do that later. So that's the one thing. The other one is excuse-itis. Now, I put this in for a bit of fun because we've been quite serious so far. So our mentor that we learned from, he used to say this: I've run out of chocolate ice cream too, okay? The whole point about that is one excuse is as good as another. The whole point is that you either make excuses or you make something happen. You either make excuses or you get results. Excuses is just hiding away from the thing that you have to do, okay? But I've run out of chocolate ice cream too was his classic saying. Every time somebody made an excuse to him, he'd just look at him and say, yeah, I've run out of chocolate ice cream too. And they just look at him stupid. They wouldn't know what he meant. But it was incredible to watch him do that because he just brushed it off because he knew where they were coming from. So as we move on, you've got two choices. You either will pay the price for failure, life, living with fear, doubt, and regret, because that's life. If you don't pay the price for success, if you don't get rid of all of the negative habits and all of the negative habit patterns, you are destined to pay the price for failure. If you pay the price for success, then the whole world can be yours. Now, success comes in many forms to many people, and I would emphasize is not just making money. Far from it, okay? You know, health and all sorts of things come ahead of that. But success was defined as the realization of a worthy ideal. So you're working towards something that is a labor of love that you believe in. So somebody who is doing something that they want to do because that's what they've chosen to do and it's the vocation in their life, that is somebody who's successful. So a teacher who wants to be a teacher and loves being a teacher and gets satisfaction from it, and they're doing it because that's what they chose to do, they are successful. So it's understanding that success isn't this thing that you see all this glitz and glamour. Success is simply a person doing what they want to do that gives them the peace of mind, the happiness, the satisfaction, the fulfillment for them on their journey, okay? That's what true success is. In this business, the price for success is very, very simple, okay? It's not complicated. I'll leave that slide up for a little bit for people to read, but that's really what this is all about. It's about starting your day by creating the correct mindset and attitude. That is so, so important. It's blocking out time slots to do your daily mode of operation consistently every single day. Watching, listening, reading 20, 30 minutes personal development material daily. Again, these are just daily habits. So this is an example, DMO, 1 to 2 hours a day. This is what your average person does, building this business, adding to the prospect list daily, adding to the ATM group daily, starting new conversations, regularly posting, following through all the conversations, asking for help from the upline team. That's really important. We are a team. It's great to see everybody contributing here as a team. That's really important. Okay. Then from that point of view, having the correct attitude plus the correct activities guarantees results. You can't not get results. If you've got the right head on and you're doing the right actions, the two go together and they give you the results. Consistent results multiplied by time gives you whatever success you want. On average in this business, 2, 3, 4 years, something like that, to get any level of success you want, okay? And, you know, at the end of the day, you have the success that gives you the confidence. So the big call out, most of you are doing this anyway, is make a commitment with your accountability partner to make this happen. And that's it. I mean, that's end of my part of the training. I'm going to
edify a few points, if you don't mind. First of all, we felt that the group needed this stage. We've had some great value points off you, Matt, and obviously our guy from the States, our Mr. Bloodthirsty when he was on. And hopefully you got value. I saw you writing down various things and we appreciate that. And there's been some great content in there.